Okay, Elysha, thank you very much for sharing your performance with us yesterday. We're going to start off with a really generic question, just about the process. So why you decided to do this topic, how the topic developed, how your research developed, and what kind of literature and sources you engaged with during that process.
So what inspired me to use masks was the notion of like using characters rather than being yourself to tell a story, and the fact that you can put on a different persona and become completely different. So I started off with my research looking into just the history of masks and where it comes from. It started off being quite ritualistic, going back to ancient China. And then the westernised countries first saw masks in ancient Greek when worshipping Dionysus, the god of fertilisation, basically. And then this kind of elaborated, and it turned from ritual to becoming more exaggerated, with having different features, showing personality, age, rank, occupation. And that's the same with like Japanese Noa masks and Chinese opera theatre. They were generalised into like old people, gods, goddesses, devils, goblins. And this ended up being able to tell biblical stories using characters like the devil, which then led on to the 15th century, which rose Commedia dell'arte, and that used stock characters, like figures in the Roman times, and like Commedia dell'arte was easy to travel due to they having little props, and it was all about the physicalisation of the body. The characters were being like very big, over exaggerated. They were sometimes grotesque, and that's what sparked my interest, as there were characters that were recognisable, like Zane, who's the bottom of the pecking order, or Archicina, the servant, and Pantalone. I noticed that I was interested in the characters and how like there was a hierarchy. So then that led me on to looking into John Wright's book, Playing the Mask, Acting Without Bullshit. I was drawn into Nunan's archetype of myth and the way the archetypes were more open, as in a bit more like ambiguous. They didn't have like an occupation or like a job. They weren't in a specific scenario. It was just like more of a persona, like the hermit or like the devil. So this then this led me to look at the female archetypes, and something Wright says earlier on in this book about the politics of beauty, and he quotes, "Average proportions start to look more attractive, whereas unusual, distinctive or unattractive faces might subconsciously be a warning that there are undesirable recessive genes at work." This made me think that there was even a sense of what is beautiful and what is not, even in a mask. He goes on to talk about symmetry and how it plays into attractiveness, and uses the mask, a woman about to do something, as an example. He quotes, "A woman about to do something is strong, but not only because she looks as if she is going to do whatever she decides to do, but also subconsciously we know she's really fit, in every sense of the word." We prejudge this mask and the person behind it before we even know anything about who the character is. The mask could be a blob, and you would still try and find a face and determine if its face is attractive or not. As I'd noticed in Commedia dell'arte, most of the women characters were unmasked, like the lovers. They were seen as young and attractive, which if you use what Wright is saying, then you would think that they are physically fit and are going to succeed in life compared to other undesirable characters. And even in Commedia dell'arte, the characters itself, like Brighella, comments on the qualities of a pretty woman, and then saying in Orgilia's book on Commedia dell'arte, it quotes, "A pretty woman should be like a horse, small head, large eyes, deep chest, arched back and easy to handle." This led me to realise even characters have opinions on women and how they should be. They have prejudgments, and it comes from like this patriarchal society. He goes on to say, "A pretty woman badly dressed is like a pheasant. Throw away the outside and apply yourself to what is inside. A woman who is ugly but well dressed is like a fox. Throw away the flesh but keep the skin." This just shows that even a servant of lower class, who is probably prejudged himself for being a servant, still believes that they can pick apart women to suit their own desire.
Okay, I'm just going to stop for a minute just because of time and everything. Yeah. So tell me, what were your kind of key theoretical frameworks for this?
So
you spoke about mask, obviously,
yeah.
and the archetypes.
So then that led me on to talking about more like feminist theories. I looked into the book. One second, let me just find it. I looked into the book Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex, where she says, man is determined as a human being, a woman as a female. Whenever she behaves as a woman, whenever she behaves as a human being, she is said to imitate the male. And this kind of shows, like, it indicates that the woman doesn't really exist. She's just an extension of man. It's almost like she has to put on her own mask herself to become what the man wants them to be. She quotes, to be a woman would mean to be the object, the other, which is where I've based a lot of my performance on. It's what I call my performance. She suggests women are here just for men's pleasure, which is what leads me to like the male gaze. So the characters of that archetype felt like they were also seen through this male gaze and male hierarchy.
And what's the theoretical framework you're using for that terminology that can you unpack that terminology a little bit, the male gaze?
So I looked into, well, to begin with, the definition, the Oxford definition of male gaze is the perspective of a notionally typical heterosexual man considered as embodied in the audience or intended audience for film or other media, characterised by a tendency to objectify or sexualise women. This then led me to the book Face Value, The Beauty of Politics, by Robin Lakoff and Raquel Skewer, and it basically talks about how beauty, like, it isn't theirs, but is the result of the judgment of others. It talks about how beauty is closely intertwined with power, and how then this power of the like patriarchal society kind of shows that there's a power difference between, like, to have power, it says, is one needs to possess something that someone else wants or needs. For a man, it can be wealth or influence or knowledge. For a woman, it is beauty. So that's where, like, the male gaze kind of came into fruition, and the whole point about, like, beauty standards, and which then led me on to talking about how, like, when there is a loss of beauty, there is a loss of power, and where there is male gaze, there would be a loss of power towards the woman.
So why is there a loss of power with a loss of beauty? Where's that coming from?
So it says, just give me 1 second. It says that beauty is political in this Face Value book. Beauty is political in that it figures in the exchange of power and influence, but it is also political in that the prospect of being considered beautiful is a political instrument held over women. It's a promise and it's a threat. So, can you just repeat the question for me again?
The question was...
why a loss of power?
Yeah, how are you linking this loss of power with this loss of beauty with loss of power?
Yeah, so because of it being like a promise and a threat, it links because if she's lost like the power, then it's almost like that's the only thing she holds. So like she has she has nothing left. So that's where the power part of it came from.
Okay, and can you pick one moment from your performance? I know there's a lot to pick, but just one particular moment that you think really kind of exemplifies your argument.
So I drew lines on my face at the start of the performance. This goes back to what Wright was saying about symmetry being the most desirable feature. I wanted to highlight to the audience that my most desired look is to be symmetrical. So from the very start of the performance, I wanted them to see me as beautiful. After being each archetype, when taking off the costume and becoming myself, I wiped off part of the makeup and part of the symmetry, which indicated that I was losing my beauty, hence why losing my power. It says in the book Face Value, beauty becomes like money, externalised, a possession, one that, like money, can be lost. But it is different to money, but it must be lost sooner or later. It indicates that beauty holds value, especially to women, and it can go back to times not even like in the 20th century, in Victorian times, like the prettier the woman, the more they would receive in life. So when at the end of the performance, when all the makeup is wiped off and I stand next to the sign that said the other, and hold up the dress that is now tainted with red chalk, and say to the audience that I have a secret, I was implying that not only is a woman's life repeated generation after generation, because the cycle will just carry on and start again, but I can no longer be seen as this innocent virgin, as I have lost all power, my symmetry is gone, and I stand there vulnerable to the looks of people in the audience.
Great.
Nice.
Thank you.